All right, so let's speak now to the department spokesperson, Steve Mabona, joining us online. Steve, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening. What is the number of deaths related to school excursions that involve learners that you have dealt with, let's say, in the last 3 years?
Good evening, Thabo, and to all our viewers. We can safely say probably more than 5. Those that we have instituted investigations and we received recommendations on how to avert, eventualities of deaths that will be happening, especially in the camps or excursions.
Yeah. So, in my head, on 3 of those, I think the one in the northwest, that camp we led to the learner, I think in the Bedford View area that passed away, the one that we just recently spoke about that also involved water, and this one. It seems your preliminary investigation, maybe even final investigations, showed that there was no adherence and compliance with the processes as outlined in terms of notifying the department or the district of the excursion and ensuring that there is sufficient invigilation and safety in those particular trips. Why?
It's quite amazing that a school will take such a decision, because remember, after the Mpianzi matter, an emphasis was put on the schools, given that we have changed the regulations, making sure that all the recommendations that came from that investigation, we had to make regulations to say, this is how you apply for an excursion, especially if it includes water. These are the requirements. You need to tick all these boxes. When you check on the camp itself, I visited it. If they applied to go there, I can assure you that there was no way that the district was going to approve that, because it will insist that there must be lifeguards. And the dams, the 2 dams that are so exposed to learners, you can't take learners there, taking from the lessons that you would have learned from the Mpianzi matter. So that trip, there was no way that it was going to be approved. So they decided to go on an unapproved trip. They based themselves in what they termed as discipline, looking at the ill discipline that they were experiencing in the school, which informed them going there. But there's no justification in going before there's an approval, because that approval would have complied with the regulations that we would have amended to try and avert any eventuality.
Is there a requirement, as far as the laws are concerned, on excursions, as far as health and safety is concerned, that puts the onus on the school, that the school has got to have representation there, be it the principal, be it the HOD, be it some of the teachers that would accompany the children?
It's given, it's there. In the regulations, it's there. In the approval process, it's there. It indicates on the number of educators that you will need for a certain number of learners. So, like in this instance, they insisted that there will be facilitators and there's no need for educators. There's no way that you can send, children, more especially with especially the educational needs, on their own, because educators would know their behavioral patterns. They would know on how they will then manage them, because they are with them on an everyday basis. Even if you have facilitators, you will require an educator to be on site so that they can then assist you in managing whatever that might be coming from a learner. So there were supposed to be educators there. There was supposed to be an SGB represented by one parent or two, because each and every excursion there must be an SGB representative. And so those are the things that we have seen, and probably the investigative body will then assist in making sure that they interact with everyone, because the allegations of abuse that they came today, we need to probe those, must interact with everyone. It's not going to be an easy one, because we are talking about 90 learners, and that the facilitators were probably at that camp around 19, and you must go to the school and interact with the school management, and all those that would have been involved from the beginning, when they started to say this is the trip that we want to undertake. Everyone there we need to interact with, so we'll give it that process.
Let's talk about that process a little bit. Whether be it a water-related excursion, there's an investigation that needs to ensue. Whether be it a food poisoning incident, there's an investigation that must be ensue. Whether be it a stabbing in the school, there's an investigation independently that must ensue. These are adding. I'm sure there's a line item that you're looking at in terms of your budget that is going to lawyers, because in most cases, this is independent law firms that you're bringing in. How much is this costing the department?
No, I would not have those figures. But what I want to dispute is that all investigations are taken to lawyers. Not all of them. Some we do them internally, because we have different units that are capable of conducting some of these investigations. But where there is complexity, and we feel that we want to also allay fears from families, because they might think that we will sweep probably things under the carpet, just to allay their fears, assure them, have independent people investigate. But to a certain extent, some families will still want to, sue us as a department, but then we'll make sure that we avail the report to them to make that decision, and then make sure that those that deservingly, they really must be compensated. We interact with them, negotiate, go on the table and say, this is what we can put on the table as a form of compensation. We know that that will not bring back a child, but because there's a precedence on previous claims on what is it that we would have paid, and we'll do that. But some families will then opt to go to lawyers, and probably they will get lesser than what they would have gotten when we deal with them. So those are the things that we are looking at. Unfortunately, I don't have the figures on how much it's costing us for an independent law firm.
So, I was coming to that next one of claims, because there are some who are raising the question of claims, and that is also akin to, the Department of Health and the litigation of malpractice, that you are beginning to tally up that number in terms of the claims that you are paying to compensate parents.
No, like as I'm saying, it depends. To a certain extent, we need to be honest. We need to check on circumstances. Where there is negligence, really, you can't say the parents are signing indemnity. That's what we normally tell people to say. That indemnity does not justify or exonerate you if you are negligent, both the school, parent, and the child. So, to a certain extent, compensation will be there, but then if you are negligent, like for instance, from the parent perspective, the difference might be the value when we look at it, to say, but you also had a role to play. But it doesn't say that we will just fold our arms and say, no, we are not doing anything. To a certain extent, some of the schools will then have an insurance, which will go to and tap into that. But some insurances will repudiate and say, no, there was a lot of negligence maybe coming from the other end, and as such, we are not in a position to pay. So it depends on the circumstances of a case and what is it that is on the table that we negotiate and agree with the families.
And at this stage, then, on the level of consequence management and accountability, where there is negligence on the part of the officials at district level or on the part of the educators themselves, what is the consequence management? What is your record of holding those people accountable?
No, I mean, if the recommendation is that we must charge employees, we do that. Within Pianza matter, there were recommendations that we must charge people that did not follow the book. We did that. In the recent one, the embark case in Thokoza, there was a recommendation that we must charge. We have charged the educators there. Their actually disciplinary process is concluded. We are just waiting for the outcome. In the Queenswood one, they've recommended that we must charge. We are finalizing the process of conferring those charges. And this one, we have just started. But our preliminary investigation really dictates that something must be done. Our labor department has started with that process. They will then update us. So this will go parallel to the investigation that will be conducted by an independent body.
What are you doing about the allegations of abuse? Are the police roped in that matter?
Look, what we said to the parents, because it's them, the family members of SBIA, who raised those, and they said they might have had that information from some of the parents because their children are back, they were alleging that. So because we have an advantage of an independent law firm that will be interacting with all those learners, including the parents of both the deceased, that information will then assist to pave the way forward for us to say, the police, these are the allegations. How do we then pursue them, if it were? So we'll be working very closely with the police. You know that they are doing their own investigation, which is parallel to what we are doing. We can't enter that space, and they will be in a position to update on the latest developments as far as their investigation is concerned. But we will rely on the investigative body to, assist us when coming to all these allegations that the families has put on the table.
Steve Mabona, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on, speaking for the Department of Education in Gauteng. That is Steve Mabona.